Hello, and welcome to the Side Escape Gaming Podcast, episode 27. I'm your host, Jake Burke, and joined, as always, by is James St. Charles, and for the first time ever, Parker Phillips. How are you boys doing? More importantly, Parker, how are you doing? Your first podcast on Side Escape.
I'm doing well. Super excited. I feel like, for the record, the guest shouldn't be interviewed last. I feel like a little slighted, so just keep that in mind.
But I'm the face of this, so I want my name to be up there first.
I just feel like I'm sure James gets a lot of mentions and is usually second because he's on the podcast a lot.
Yeah.
And I just feel like now I'm in a smaller box.
Yep.
James mentioned last. It's okay.
No, that's fine. I mean, James, you like being mentioned last, right? It's more important.
Yeah.
First
the lasting effect.
Yeah, first the worst, second the best. Because this is the Side Escape Gaming Podcast, episode 27, where every Monday morning a new episode goes live on youtube.com, SoundCloud, and Spotify. Once a week, we sit down and Skype across 500 miles, or if Parker and I in the next room, and we talk about a gaming-related topic and what games we have been playing. This week's topic is possibly our biggest topic of all time, and ever will be. We are going to be reviewing The Last of Us Part 2, spoiler-free, and we will have a separate Part 2 of this episode, the Part 2, of a spoiler cast, afterwards talking about the story details and everything that we want to talk about in that. If you like the show, remember to subscribe and tune in every Friday for the Side Escape Game Report, where James and I break down the biggest stories of gaming this week. Now, before we talk even about The Last of Us Part 2, which Parker and I have beaten, James is about to beat. He's so close he can taste it.
Basically.
I want to jump back to 2013. Let's talk about The Last of Us Part 1.
And we're going to spoil stuff in it.
Yeah, of course. We'll talk a little bit about spoilers. And
heads up.
Yeah.
That one's fine.
Yeah. Past the statute of limitations for spoilers. What is your history? We'll start with Parker on The Last of Us Part 1.
I guess the history of it. For a little bit of context as the guest, I'm not as involved in video games as you two are. I love them. Great hobby. Jake, you are sort of my main avenue and outlet for video game news and what games to play. And that's how I came across The Last of Us Part 1, because you were talking about it, you were excited about it. PS4 exclusive or PS3 exclusive, whichever one.
PS3.
And I remember you were super excited. You loved playing it. I don't know what time of year was it came out. I think you had started it at some point, and you were like, dude, this game is awesome. It's amazing. I love it. And then I was over there at your house one day watching you play it, and I think I sat there. This is one of the few games that I will just sit and I enjoyed watching you do your thing, and I was just following along, engrossed in it.
Yeah.
Got so much entertainment out of just being like a bystander to this video game. But I talk about spoilers, so I think I was there the first time I watched through, maybe second time that we were sitting and playing, is the scene where Ellie and Joel are at the college. They're getting out of the college, and Joel gets in that one little quick time event, and it's just a normal dude, falls over the railing, gets hit with the rebar, and it's a hard cut to winter, and you're playing as Ellie, and you're thinking, holy cow, Joel's dead, I'm Ellie, this is crazy. And so that was obviously a huge moment, cements the game, it's great. Went back and played it on my own, but that's how I was introduced to it, loved it, one of my favorite games of all time, and something special. I've been waiting for this new one, past 7 years like everybody else, super excited about it. Yeah.
And the delays killed us, but it was well worth it.
Thank God there were delays. And James, what about you?
Okay, so my experience is played it when it came out and actually didn't think much of it. And then I was talking with you and your experience, and then I revisited it probably 9 months ago on PS4.
Yep.
And it was completely different. I don't remember why the first time it just didn't hit me too much, but maybe it's just I had more experience in my life, and then relating to the story, especially the final part, which definitely want to talk about that, because there was a podcast that they do, the Last of Us podcast, and they today
got to the
I think it was today.
Yeah,
they deep dove into what the the ending of part 1 is, and I thought man, it didn't really click with me until I played it the second time, and then hearing your experience with it, which it definitely hit harder, it played way better, and just Parker was saying, just being a bystander and watching it, because I've seen it, I watched streamers play and all that, it's just as good. Although it's better if you're playing it. I say if you're playing it, the decisions are hit harder and the story is more immersive.
Yeah, obviously you just mentioned the Last of Us podcast, but I think for me, playing The Last of Us in any video game is so much more powerful when you get to play it. And that moment of Parker just spoke about, when you become Ellie, you're not like, oh, Ellie's still alive. It's like, oh, now I am Ellie, and you have a like different ownership like role that becomes it. And that was, for me, The Last of Us really exemplified that. No game had really done that before. I mean, probably that they had, but not to the extent that The Last of Us did. And like your companion then became you, and you realize the story is not just about the person you are, but both sides of it.
Yeah.
It's a tired story of this podcast and everyone else's like life that has heard me talk about this. But The Last of Us is my favorite game of all time. I've mentioned it for the last 6 years. I played it after my first girlfriend, broke up with me on a phone call, and it was this engrossing story that kind of I lost myself in, and I kind of related to Joel, not like as broken as he was, obviously, because his daughter died in front of him, but I was kind of broken and sad, and so like having that character going through the same things of depression was helpful. And so The Last of Us, I bonded with. I've beaten it probably 10 times and platinum it on PS3. I am the 0.0% or whatever it was, 0.01% on PS3, and then playing it, of course, on PS4 and bonding a lot with Parker about The Last of Us. That's why you're on this show, is because The Last of Us is kind of our thing. And then, of course,
That's it.
yeah,
That's the only reason.
That's the only reason. And then I was super stoked for this second one. But that being said, it wasn't a sequel that I ever wanted after playing the first one. And like you said with the ending, which we should talk about, but the first game ended, and I was like, I wasn't clamoring for like, I want more time with these characters. Like, I love that experience so much, and it felt so complete, and it was the story they wanted to tell, that I never felt like, give me another one. It wasn't like a Star Wars movie or a Marvel movie, right? Like, I was like, this was a story, and this touched me in an emotional way that like Good Will Hunting did. So yeah, so the ending I think is important, because we were talking, Gunnar and I, who's a friend of of the show and stuff, and he was like, so I've been watching the stream, and I'm wondering, when you beat it, did you get the good or bad ending for like the second one? And I was like, you've never seen the first one, because there are no good or bad endings. Like, this is a story they're telling. So yeah, let's talk about the ending, James, of The Last of Us Part 1.
So part 1, which definitely ties into part 2, but we're not gonna. I don't think we should probably mention.
No, I don't want to spoil anything for part 2.
But there's a decision that's made. Basically, what you find out is Ellie has like the cure for the virus going around, or I guess whatever. I can't remember what it's called.
The infection.
Just they didn't have a called name yet, so just
Cordyceps.
the infection going around.
Yeah.
She's immune basically, and the Fireflies basically not really anti-government, but people who are just like
they're like freedom fighters,
mercenaries. Yeah, like just freedom fighters probably. They are transporting her to a college to make basically a cure. And so it's Joel's job, and he just accepts the job because he's basically, that's his kind of work.
Yeah.
To
take her across the country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's nothing at the start, but then as you go through the journey, it's like becomes so much more, and their bond just gets better over time through the like troubles, and it's definitely helping Joel. And so as they get to the hospital, I guess the college, Joel is like basically faced with a decision, and you find out that Ellie is basically has to die
to make the cure.
They have to like, I don't know, they have to like get to her. They talk about like the back of the brain.
Because the cordyceps, basically like the fungus, affects the whole brain, and they got to basically take it off her and take.
So they basically have to kill her, and like that's all you're said. Like you're told, you're just like, yeah, she's gonna have to die too. And then Joel, of course, is just like,
fuck that.
Stuff's going through his mind, and he's like, this is basically how I see it. Like this is basically his daughter. Like he's been through so much, and he's like raising her like his own daughter. And he makes the decision to, say fuck that, grab Ellie, kill everyone basically to get out of there, and leave. And he basically makes the decision of the weight of millions, basically the world, or this one girl. And I think it's such a powerful thing, like especially if someone like had a family and like that's your daughter.
Yeah. Well, and Joel is such a character that like the world has taken everything from him. Like, his daughter dies in the very beginning of the game. That's the prologue. Is you won't play as Sarah, and she dies, and like the world has taken everything from him. So it's his like one moment of like, that's gonna take another thing from me. Yeah, and the
weight of the world versus his own daughter.
And I think it's powerful,
extremely powerful. Because like the game leading up to this moment, you really don't know. Like it's like, oh yeah, you're just gonna deliver her, and that's it. But then they throw this at you, and it just becomes so much more. And then you're talking about like the after the scene, like when you're playing as Ellie, and she's like fighting for herself in the snow and all, and that's another thing. I think it just gets powerful.
It just did characters better than any other game.
Yeah, really. And then Joel hides the lie, basically.
Yeah, he lies to her.
like yeah, it's like nope, it didn't work out. There's actually a bunch of people who are immune. That's the lie basically.
Yeah.
And yeah, how that ends, like how you said it, maybe there really didn't need to be another game because it just ended like that. But since there was another game, yeah.
There was. It's called The Last of Us Part 2, baby. And I think that's a great way to jump into it. So, two of us have beaten The Last of Us Part 2. One of us is an hour away.
I can't believe that I'm an hour away. I thought
You're so close. You're so close.
Yeah. If you're good, it's an hour. If you're bad, it's 2.
Yeah, so if you're Parker, it's probably 2 hours. If you were me, you're in there out in an hour.
In there.
So, Parker, I want to know, just without spoiling anything, Last of Us Part 2, overview, what do you think about it?
We've talked about it, and I think Last of Us Part 1 and 2, especially both of them. I think there's two ways. Like you can enjoy it as a video game, and like you're playing it. The gameplay is awesome. It takes all the great parts of the first game that you love, like all the combat, all the fun stuff. It's different. It's unique. I don't think they ruined any of that. They made it all better. So as a game, I think it's an improvement. It's a great sequel. They make it just new enough to where, it's just kind of fresh and exciting, but they don't change anything too drastically or get rid of anything that you love from the first one. So I think as a game, it's great, wonderful sequel. And then, with The Last of Us especially, the story is so heavy. It is really all about the narrative, and that's what drives you to keep playing. It's not a high score. It's not beating somebody online. It's you just want to see what happens with these characters. And again, I'll also not to spoil anything. I think playing the first one with just as a standalone thing, not knowing how it's going to end, what's going on. I think the pacing is great. It's so interesting what they do with like the side characters that come through and the really like action-packed parts versus like the just boring kind of exploring parts that are slow. I think
first Last of Us you're talking about?
Yeah, part one. I think part one, that maybe because it's so like new and you are just like going through the journey and learning about these characters. Maybe you give the game more time to kind of like do its thing and just do its own pacing. I think Last of Us 2, it's so much longer. There's so much more story in it. I think that it's super ambitious the way that they had all these characters and they're trying to make you feel for all these characters. I think that's hard to do in an expert way that feels really natural and you don't get kind of bogged down in the slow stuff. I think that's maybe the one shortcoming for Last of Us 2 is some of the narrative is a little less compelling than I think the first one. And then some other parts you're like locked in, like, damn, this is awesome. I just want to keep going again. Yeah. But I don't think that takes away from it in the big picture. I don't think it means it's an awful game. I think it's just compared to the first one, that was something that felt different. And it's just so much longer, and there's so much more going on.
Yeah, it's like probably about, I think, like 10 to 12 hours longer than the first one.
Yeah.
Which, so James, where are you at with Last of Us Part 2? I know you haven't beaten it, but in your experience so far.
Okay, so since I'm close to the end, without spoiling anything, it's the scope of Last of Us Part 2 is unlike anything I've seen. Like I can't even compare it to the first game because to me the first game is like a traditional, like here's the story, here's that, but it like had all these elements that made it so well, even though there wasn't as much. And then 2, like it just builds upon that and makes it like 10 times bigger. Like you go through these huge cities that are like completely like perfectly made that you've seen in the trailers, like the scope and the graphics, and that it's so immersive that it's scary. The ambience, the weather, and like how you're like navigating. I don't remember feeling quite that way with the first one. There were certain areas, but it wasn't to that extent. Like it wasn't that big. Like you get immersed, but it's not like here's the scope. Here's like this whole city you can go and run around, and that's to me like, man, it made me really want like some sort of like Last of Us open world game. You can like really truly like get into it. Like they have it. Like I feel like man, if they could just really like expand upon it, like Dying Light, but with Last of Us.
With Last of Us.
Picture that. That would be so good.
I would say like one of my major, it's not even a complaint, but it's a small gripe I have with Last of Us Part 2, and I'm going to be very like kind of more negative in the beginning of this, but I like the idea of these open environments and like how big some of these areas are that you fight a lot of either infected or the hunters or the WLF. But I think it's almost too open to its detriment. There are certain areas where like it's so wide open that I like don't know if I've killed everybody, and I'm literally waiting for my companion to just be like, that wraps it up, and I'm like sitting there crouched and just like waiting, like, are you going to say the line? Did we kill everybody? I don't know. Like,
Oh,
it's so
yeah.
big.
Sometimes where you don't know if enemies like are still
Yeah,
around.
or I'll find myself having to like throw a bottle just to hear if somebody goes, "Hey, there's someone over here." Like you lose track of people sometimes, and I know that's part of the game. But like in the first game, you could pretty much listen and like see most people, but because the areas are so wide, and it's good, you can't listen and get an X-ray view of the whole place. But like I find myself, especially in like the first day of Seattle, which I'm now replaying, there are some areas where it's like it's so open. I don't know if I've killed everybody, and like. I even literally earlier today or yesterday, I was playing a section and Dina said her line and she was like, "We're all good here." Excuse me, spoiler, I'll bleep that part out.
Oh my.
but like my companion said, like, "We're all good here." And then I turned a corner and a guy was like, "Hey," and I was like, "You broke the rule. The rule is if you say a line, then we're done." So like that was a little weird.
We had an agreement.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
So that's like my one kind of gripe is I love the idea of the open environments, but I think some parts are too open for mainly combat, especially, and especially in harder difficulty combat where you only have like one bullet and you're like, this guy's got unlimited ammo. I kill him and he's not going to drop any ammo. So that's frustrating. That being said, I think The Last of Us 2 is an utter masterpiece. I don't think it's better than the first one.
No.
But I think that's just because the first one's a smaller scope story that feels more personal.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, I don't think I've ever had the emotional response as I did with this game. Multiple times, I think, it's been told that like this is a revenge story of Ellie, right? Like Ellie is the main character. She is out for revenge for something. And that's been widely, that's not a spoiler. And there are times when like I felt almost sick of like, I don't want Ellie to do this. And it's such an interesting thing that a game can make you do of like, not only do you not want to do this, you're doing this. And like, that's the hard part of like this game. And I really find that difficult. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's so powerful to have been able to accomplish that.
That's a testament to the first game though.
Yeah, exactly.
The first game did such a good job to make you love these characters.
Mm-hmm.
And the second one just like uses that, against you in certain ways that's like it toys with your emotions and it's a beautiful thing because you're like oh I see that person or that person's doing this or look how they're doing this and it's just it's great to see but I get what you're saying at the same time like the emotional response is different.
It's different and difficult but I find that really amazing that a game can do that because movies can't really accomplish that.
We're talking about this. This is a game that has this cinematic real world feel to it that's like cannot be done with a movie. Yeah, we'll see what the series. We'll see what that series. Though.
We'll see what the HBO series is. But yeah, but and I think too that like speaking of the first game, obviously Joel and Ellie are such a key part, and they meet the little side characters of Bill and everyone else. I think that the side characters in this and Tommy, but I think the side characters in this game that are introduced are early on are very strong. Like I think that the cast of characters in this game, I don't want to get into names or anything, huge, but equally compelling characters. I mean, honestly, I have a few favorites that weren't even mentioned in any of the art or stuff. Like I think that's really cool. These side characters had such like an impactful resonance, I guess would be the right word.
I think you definitely spend more time with all like the ancillary cast and like the side characters in this game as compared to the first one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with the first one, you just like it's like quick thing, like hey, how are you? All right, we're going. See you.
Yeah, or the first one very clearly felt like this level is like this guy's area, like Bill's town.
Bill's town.
Here in Bill's town, I got my objective. Even when like we first meet Bill, I'm like, okay, like you're obviously not. He's not gonna like come along with us.
Yeah.
Because he obviously hates you guys. He doesn't want to help. But it felt a lot more like linear, and they didn't really add much else to the story or like to the characters' motivations or like how we see the characters at all. They were just kind of there to help out and like fun second stuff. Whereas part two, the side characters themselves have like a lot more depth, a lot more going on there.
Mm-hmm.
They also add more context to Ellie and Joel, and they kind of shape how you see Ellie and Joel as characters.
Yeah,
which I thought was cool.
Yes,
it's definitely done well.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it even adds layers of like obviously it's a sequel, so it's gonna add layers, but it adds layers to Joel and Ellie in certain ways. Like I love when you get to see just their houses that they have in Jackson, like that they're in this peaceful community towards the beginning of the game, and seeing how they live is such an interesting thing of like seeing like small spoiler but like Joel's woodworking. I was like, this like dude that I just murdered millions of people across the country with, he's a woodworker, he's got a little hobby, like he makes a cowboy riding a horse. Like I love this kind of stuff. How did you feel about gameplay in Last of Us Part 2? Because I think that's a big improvement on the first one.
Yeah, loved it.
Clean.
Yeah, very clean. I mean, definitely like it was what I expected coming in from the first one, because the first one did have a pretty unique, it's definitely a unique take on gameplay and aiming and how to use the inventory system. I think they really nailed it that first time around. So there wasn't, when I finished part one, there's not a lot to improve on, combat wise and like gameplay wise, especially for the time back in 2013. So I think they did a great job, seeing what was worthwhile, seeing what stuck, what did well the first game, and just kind of improving on it in the second one. So it's good.
Yeah, and I think that going prone and the jump button, I think adds a lot, in my opinion, with like Ellie. And I love being able to climb under a car and having that kind of laying in the grass and shooting someone with like the bow and arrow is the coolest thing. Like, I
love the grass.
When I figured out that you could lay down and shoot, it was like, it changed everything for me. Because of course you can. I just didn't think about it. I still forget I can lay down.
Even like playing the first one, it was such like a simple thing that I guess because you can't do it, obviously they don't introduce it. But I also never felt like, man, I wish I could lay down. Like they definitely shaped the game around that combat, and like I didn't come away thinking, damn, I really want to jump, or like, man, I really want to be able to go prone. It's such like every other game you can do that.
Yeah.
But part two was like such a fun new dynamic that changed it up and made it fresh.
Yeah, and it makes more sense as Ellie as like not being, Joel's just brooding, brute force kind of guy. As Ellie, you have to be more tactical and getting around. And, I love that there are sections of the game that you can completely pass through undetected and complete. A lot of times in The Last of Us Part 1, you had to kill every person in order to move past them. You can slip past some infected every so often, but slipping through just like humans is like so fun when you're like crawling next to a dude and he's looking that way and you're like, oh my God, don't look. And like get past him. I'm like, this is awesome.
I would say playing part two and playing through it every time that I like, because until you maybe get past a scene or a sequence or an area, it's not really a spoiler, but I guess once you get through it, it's pretty clear at the end, like, ooh, I'm like locking the door behind me somehow, or like getting out in a rush and like hopping down a wall or climbing something. You're like, damn, I could have maybe stuck through that and left enemies behind me. And that made me want to go through and try those areas again on like my second playthrough and try and do them sneaky. Yeah. So I pretty much wiped out every chance I had because
why not?
A, it's fun. B, didn't want to like risk it because I'm not that good. But okay, cool. Like there are so many more areas that I never would have thought that you could just sneak by. That obviously you can. So
yeah, the hospital area that was the state of play demo that they showed before the game released. That whole area, we watched on the state of play. The guy like kind of snuck and then started like kind of a raging gunfight. I was able to sneak through most of that area undetected. And I only killed like the dog, which is awful. We'll talk about killing these dogs in a little bit.
I hate that.
I killed a dog and I killed like one dude and I just snuck through it. And it was like the coolest thing. I was like, oh my God, I can just do this without killing like anybody. How do you feel about killing dogs, James?
Not good. Like it makes you feel not good because the way they die is like, super brutal. Yeah. And then, I guess not really a spoiler, but then sometimes when you kill even the humans, like it could be brutal.
Yeah, well, I think that's good to talk about is the name calling and the humanization of these enemies, which I always thought.
And the dogs,
and the dogs. All the dogs have names too. Yeah. Do you know when you kill a person and they have a dog, if the dog doesn't see you or know where you came from, it'll just sit there and cry?
Yeah, the dog whimpers.
Yeah, the dog whimpers at the guy's dead body.
Yep.
Really sad.
Didn't know that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And if you kill the dog and the human's right there and he doesn't know where it came from, he'll like check on the dog and like start saying its name a lot. It's really sad.
It's the AI with in this game is incredible. Like it works, you trick it with like throwing objects and stuff like that. But even then, it's like the stealth aspect of it is pretty good. Like on par with like some of the best stealth games out there, which is a testament to Last of Us and their AI development
and just Naughty Dog in general, man. They know how to make a freaking game.
How'd they make this game so good on PS4? Like it looks amazing and it's running on PS4.
Yeah,
can you imagine the PS5 one?
I know. The graphics in this game are insane. I don't think I've ever seen anything look quite like it.
I'm playing on Slim, and I know you're playing on Pro. Are you playing on Pro, Parker, or regular?
Yeah,
Slim.
Yeah, and it looks great on Slim.
Yeah, I'm not. So. It's amazing. And we played through The Last of Us Part 1 recently before Part 2 came out, like a week before it came out or so. Just kind of as a little refresher.
Yeah.
And like Jake, you and I were saying, I remember how great Last of Us Part 1 looked, and when like look at these people, like they did like a mocap and like their whole body moves, and it looks real, looks great. And we played it now. And we're like, it looks good for 2013, pretty good. But then like Last of Us Part 2 is just also stellar. It's amazing.
I remember thinking when Part 1 came out, like, no game will ever look like this is the pinnacle. You cannot make it more realistic. It's impossible.
Yeah.
And then now looking at this, it's like the fidelity in this game is insane.
Yeah,
like,
good word.
Thank you. I know smart words.
Very good word.
But yeah, like
word.
it's an SAT word for you.
Would you say it's high?
High fidelity. Good movie. But yeah, like just like the way the environment interacts. I love when you're walking through snow and you hit like a tree branch and the tree lets off all the snow.
You're telling me about that. I haven't done that.
Dude, every time I play that first section, I just walk right through that tree because it's just so fun. But I'm amazed at like how good this game looks. And then
What
plays. Yeah.
Like you just mentioned the snow environment, and there's so many in this game that it's like, and they're all done perfectly. Like I was telling you about Seattle, it's just like, damn, it's so great, and then it like evolves. I don't want to mention what happens, but it's just like it's great with how it handles the environment
and utilizes it. Yeah. And Seattle, the set there's some set pieces in this game that are like, obviously Last of Us 1 really didn't have many set piece moments. Like had these encounters, but like there are some really cool set piece moments in this game that are wickedly fun, that are similar to almost Uncharted kind of level of like action, but I still think fit that grounded world a little bit, which is just super fun. And yeah, I'm in awe by The Last of Us Part 2. I think it is a complete package total from story, graphics, gameplay, everything that makes a video game.
I love the music.
Oh, the score in this game. Come on.
Yeah.
I genuinely think it's one of the best games I've ever played. Just a complete package front to end. It is amazing. It is,
yeah, I think that's like an interesting thing about like games now. There's like so much capability with like the machines and on consoles and stuff. Is like the production value that goes into them these days, or could go into them. I think that plays a huge part into like the lasting power of a game and like how how long are people going to play this? How long are people going to care about it? All that stuff. And Naughty Dog has obviously done a great job. They're putting their all into these games. They're focused. There's so much effort, and then you can tell right away when playing it.
Yeah.
I think it's that you can have a good story, you can have good gameplay, but if you don't have like the good writing, good graphics, good music, good score, all that stuff, it takes away from it. But like the production effort and value in both these games for the times that they were made, it's always stellar.
Oh yeah, and I think just capitalizing on performances of these actors too that really bring these characters to life. That also not just in cutscenes, because it was such a video game thing back then to like the cutscenes where the acting happens and then it's just gameplay. And this really seamlessly puts them together. There are multiple times I'm playing where like I kind of didn't move the stick right away because I didn't realize that like the cutscene was over. Which I love when games do that now. Obviously, Last of Us Part 1, when we were playing it, like it has a hard cut. Like it's a black screen cutscene.
Yeah.
This doesn't. It is a seamless cutscene, kind of like Final Fantasy VII Remake did, which I think is... I love that when like it goes in and out, like it's the camera work.
I guess remember. Sorry, not to interject. No. Maybe I'm stepping back from my high production comment, but it is really amazing. They've done a great job with everything. But do you remember? I don't know if you picked up on it, James. Maybe you did too. It's not a spoiler, but I feel like you can tell that Joel, Ellie, like the main characters, they look great. Their hair looks good. The lips look good, and then some of the side characters maybe not so much.
I'll agree with that.
I think it's not a spoiler to say the character's name. Jesse is like weirdly low animated.
Yeah, and it's like, and that was very jarring.
Yeah,
like, we played the first like couple like half hour together, Jake, you and I, kind of at the same time. I remember we were talking after each.
We played the first 4 hours together.
And we were talking after each. I lost track of time. But I remember like every little cutscene or like breaking point, we would pause, see where the other person's at, wait for them to catch up. But I remember, when you get introduced to Jesse, he opens the door, and I'm like, he doesn't look as good as Ellie, does he?
Yeah, like he was particularly low.
Ellie and Joel throughout the game, it's just like, especially Ellie, like the transformation in like how they have like certain like with the environment and how they look in the scenes. But you're right, those side characters like kind of look the same the whole time.
Yeah. I think even just like either the time and the money, whatever, going into their capture and stuff. It was still great, still amazing for a video game, but it was a little jarring that it was kind of different sometimes. I felt like.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would like you were saying, the changes that they go through day to day, but then like the side characters are always in the same clothes, and you're like,
Same clothes, same thing. Yeah.
Ellie brought a bunch of change of clothes, and nobody else did. I guess like she packed ahead.
She was prepared.
Yeah, I think that would be like my one other complaint is like I guess there are some low poly things, but like how much can they have done more with like the environments that it looks stunning and really just
that's such a minor thing that we're talking about.
No, it is, but I feel like when a game doesn't have a bunch of like other glaring problems, you got to find the little stuff.
Yeah.
That's so true. Like even like okay.
Thank you. One thing that I feel like you've never really seen in like any like apocalyptic. Well, I'm sure some. I shouldn't say any. I haven't played them all. But like, how can we never see them like pick up a jacket and be like, oh, I could use this in 2 weeks, or like in winter, like have them find like clothing on some dude or like in someone's bag. And you're like, I'll hang on to that.
But they do.
They do.
Maybe
Well,
not
obviously
clothing,
they do. But
I
wish they would like show.
At one point, they do grab some stuff off of people.
Have that in there.
The one thing that I've always had a problem with The Last of Us, I just got to get it out there. Ellie walked the country in Converse. I walk like 10 feet in the Converse and my feet hurt. I love wearing Converse, but like there's a price to pay when you put on those canvas shoes. And she goes all over them. She must be so flat-footed.
She's not a wuss.
It's true.
Yeah. Also, she does have that one little call out. Again, I guess maybe that's a spoiler, but her friend makes fun of her for that.
Yeah, she does. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They make fun of Ellie for wearing not.
Yep.
I don't consider that a spoiler. There is a good Converse call out.
I don't know what the rules are. You tell me.
And I think that this game also, just in general, like, Parker, I know you're thinking about it too, but playing it a second time once you've beaten it, I think is super powerful. There's just a lot of things that you don't, know about their relationships because obviously there's a 4-year gap before the events of Last of Us 1 to 2, and slowly kind of uncovering that 4-year gap through conversations that are had. You get a lot more out of it once you go back, which I think is really fun.
Once you have all that context.
Yeah, especially a lot of stuff like is talked about in Jackson. Just between the characters that all know each other. Obviously, random side people aren't yelling at Ellie in the field, but what do you think of? Just so we talked about a little bit about Seattle and touched on it briefly, but the Scars and the WLF. We don't have to go into details about them, but like them as enemies, opposed to hunters.
That was good. I don't know. It's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. Yeah.
I think it's kind of like obviously a lot about this game is that people in general and like what they're doing and their motivations and their actions is not black and white. Obviously, just kind of like in real life, it's more gray. Whereas Last of Us 1, clearly it's like, okay, hunters, bad.
Mm-hmm.
And like very clearly bad. Cannibals, bad.
Mm-hmm.
So that, I think, again, that makes sense because they didn't want to, focus on that kind of like gray area with the factions or whatever else in Last of Us 1. But this part 2 is very much, that's a whole part of the narrative is, what you're doing the right thing? Is it the wrong thing? And it all kind of depends on perspective and how you want to see stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like the WLF and the Scars are a good way to, sort of encapsulate that in like a bigger group because one is like a religious faction, the other is this paramilitary group. And maybe it's, I don't know if it's too much of a spoiler or not, but throughout the game, there's no clear cut like, oh, these are the good guys, the bad guys for their groups. They're both fighting each other. But they're both fighting each other for like, I don't know what I can say.
But I see what you're saying.
It's like each party thinks the other party started this war. And so it's like, and you never hear the answer. They never tell you, oh, it was XYZ. They leave it up, to your interpretation on purpose, obviously. And I think that's just part of the bigger theme of the game of, the gray area, the moral in between.
And that was such a thing of the first game, right? Like Joel is not a good character. Like he's not a good person, even in the first game. And it's just all about these choices that are so humanized.
This game shoves it down your throat, though.
It does.
But I think a lot of people like not miss, but I think, I don't know, not everyone keys into that in the first game of like, no one takes a second to think of like Joel's like background, like what made him, what did he do to get here to this point in life where he is a smuggler and he's doing all this stuff and he, it's very much like anti-military. And I think that the first one, it's, in video games, as opposed to like TV shows and movies, like a TV show and a movie, you have like the main character, the protagonist, but that guy, he might be like, morally bad, ethically bad, but he's still the main focus of a show. But then as like the audience, you're like, oh, well, he's like, that guy's a shithead. He's a bad guy. He's evil, but that's who you're following. In video games, I think anytime you're a main character, people just kind of like, because what I maybe empathize with whoever you're playing as, that's sort of like, oh, I should be doing this. This is like the good choice. And I think in Last of Us 1, it's the whole thing is like you're shepherding this little girl, you're watching out for her, you're surviving with her. That story in itself, he's doing like, the good things because he's killing the bad guys, he's saving her. But what is his history like? You don't know. And no, I think in the first one, a little, it's harder, or you have to be more critical to kind of take a step back and think, oh, Joel, is kind of sketchy, or he obviously could be a bad person. And then in this game, I think they kind of like, they make that a little more apparent, and they very much push that.
Yeah.
I think it also like surprised a lot of people. It's like, well, what do you mean? Like, this guy made bad decisions. Like I was him in the first game. I loved all my decisions.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think that's true.
One question I had for you guys. Did you guys have any crashes?
No.
Any noticeable glitches or errors?
Did you?
This has probably been one of the most cleanest games I've ever played
Good
at
point.
this scope. 30 hours and not having any like crashes or really like detrimental glitches.
You're
or
at
anything like
30
that.
hours?
No, I'm not. I'm saying 30 hours.
Oh,
I'm not
okay.
saying
I was like,
30 hours.
dang, that's a long time.
No,
Yeah.
it's 25, right?
Yeah,
think
that's right.
20.
Yeah.
I actually don't know my time, but it's probably like
Okay.
around there.
Yeah, no, I never had any hiccups or
But
anything, really.
at that scope, I say 30 hours max.
I had one glitch, actually, in my most recent playthrough. And it wasn't even a big deal, but like when you can pick up a rope and like throw ropes.
Oh, the rope physics
Yeah.
are a little interesting.
So, well, no, but what happened was like there was a section to like grab a rope, and I was like near it, but not near it, but it popped up the little icon. So I pressed triangle, and like Ellie couldn't get to the rope because there was a character in the middle of the rope. No. And so Ellie just like shot around the map and then got to the rope. It was the most jarring thing I've ever seen. It was just like she went, and they got to the rope, and I was like, yeah, I guess video games. But no,
That's so minor.
Yeah, really minor.
Nothing that's like soft locked or hard lock or like in this scale. Yeah,
No,
that's just.
It's not like Jedi Fallen Order. Yeah, I think this game. Do you have something to?
Technical timeout.
Yeah.
Am I getting really dark?
It's just.
Yeah, it's fine. It's just the light.
You want to turn a light on or no?
No, you'll be fine. We'll probably wrap up soon.
Other technical timeout. Yeah, I gotta head up pretty soon.
I'm also gonna get a drink. 1 second.
Okay, we'll pause for 2 seconds, then we'll come back.
Sorry, 1, 2.
No, it's okay. We'll go on. All right, Parker's taking a drink, but we'll come back. So James, before Parker comes back, I have a real important question for you. This will be part of the podcast. Is this your game of the year so far?
I mean, I'll see with the ending. I need the ending for to make final decision, but I think so. Yeah. Like Final Fantasy VII was basically there the whole time, but man, it's just weird playing a sequel that you're so attached to the first game and it's this good.
Yeah, I think this is a sequel that I totally understand why they made it now. This deserved to be made 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So far it's probably number 1 with 7 right behind it, all the way. I still think 7's score is way better, but that being said, it has the original score helping it, so I don't know.
Yeah.
That's hard. But yeah.
Parker, I know this is one of many less games than you've played this week. Wait, let me rephrase that. You haven't played as many games as us this year. Is this your game of the year so far?
Sure, why not?
All right, cool. I think it's probably your only game you've played.
What else come out this year?
Nothing that you've played.
Final Fantasy VII.
Parker hasn't played a new game besides this year.
You know what? I take it back. Smash Bros. Ultimate. Locked in.
That came out like 2 years ago.
That was 2019?
No, that was 2018. December 2018. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2019, that was a bad year.
It was. Jedi Fallen Order was game of the year. So
didn't even make it.
Final thoughts, I think, because I know James has a hard out. Final thoughts on The Last of Us Part 2. Spoiler free. How do you feel about it?
Loved it. Loved playing it. I think we kind of touched on the fact that it's a sequel that no one really. I guess we expected it because the game was so successful, but the story didn't really need it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think clearly, the first one did really well. It was maybe going to be encapsulated story, but they were like, could we do something? Can we make something happen? And I think they did a great job coming up with a story that is still satisfying. I think gameplay wise as a game, it's great. It's amazing. It's fun. Narrative wise, there's nothing else like it that has been made before.
I agree.
I think when you do something like that big and it's such an interesting type of story for a video game, I think it's tough to do right. They did a very good job. I wouldn't say it's perfect, but it's a great sequel, and I still enjoyed it.
James,
I feel the exact same way. And once we get to the spoiler cast, there is something I really want to like drill into
Okay.
that what this game does on a story that like I've never seen.
Yeah.
But
Well, and that's, I think I know where you're going with that. I'm not going to spoil anything, but
mhm.
The aliens.
the aliens are crazy in this game, man.
yeah, the aliens.
The Martians, when they get involved. No, this game is, I think you do yourself a disservice if you watch this game. I think
Yes.
you do yourself a disservice if you read about this game. I think
Mhm.
anything about that, if you play video games and you have an opportunity to play The Last of Us Part 2, I think this game deserves to be played with how gameplay is used to tell the story.
Yep.
I,
And to add on that, sorry, really quick, it's just you do yourself a disservice if you're thinking games should be made a certain way,
Mhm.
and you're not open to like a different way of telling a story.
Yeah. And I
That's
really think that's with utilizing gameplay to tell the story is something that no game has done on this scale.
Nope.
And how it's utilized. And I personally think this is a masterpiece. I think from front end, like I said before, it might be the best game I've ever played. Just total package for $60, like whatever you want to say. It is so well done and so much care and thought was put into this game and story. I mean, I think it's a must play, and I think it's one of my favorite games of all time.
Wow.
I
agree there.
mean, like, I think I probably have it at like number 4 or 5 for me. It is incredible.
It's
Way better than a board game.
Way better than a board game.
Oh yeah, you're gonna.
Way better than Catan. That's all I got to say, folks.
Okay.
Catan's pretty good, though.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, Parker, thank you so much for joining us on The Last of Us review on Side Escape. How'd it go?
Had a great time.
Perfect.
Comfy chairs,
We'll never see it again.
great studio. The snacks in the lobby, killer. You guys nailed it.
Oh my
Your
God.
reception,
Work hard on that.
kind of a jerk.
She's hot, though.
That's uncomfortable. I thought it was a dude.
There it is. Well, thank you so much for watching The Last of Us Part 2 spoiler-free review. Next week, James and I will be here talking about our game of the year so far. Thank you
I
so
will
much.
not be.
Parker will not be, but we'll have him write in about The Last of Us Part 2 we just talked about. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to subscribe, and we will see you next week.